Alrighty. Well, I want to welcome you to tonight's tax lien investing training. I'm excited to be here. Hopefully you're excited to be here. We're going to have a lot of information to go over. So let's go ahead and get started because I'd like to get through some of the training as quickly as we can tonight so that we have as much time as possible to go look at upcoming auctions. That's something that I believe that students enjoy, that investors enjoy. They can go out there and see some of the properties that are happening. We can go through kind of the steps of researching those properties, and it gives you a better idea, if you haven't invested yet, of how do you go about the process of researching property. So before we get started, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about me because we do have some new students coming in and some new investors. My name is Steven Swenson. I attended my first tax sale in 1999. My real estate broker invited me to come out to the auction. I was a brand new real estate agent, and I saw properties being picked up and purchased for 20–30% of the market value. And it completely amazed me, and so at that time I started researching the tax sale market and really kind of fell in love with it. I established Tax Sale Solutions along with one of my business partners in 2007, and for 10 years we worked directly with the seminar companies. So we provided the seminar companies with their programs and their products and their websites. I've taught over 20,000 students nationwide, and my books have been featured in TV infomercials and in many different seminars. I also want to, some of you guys have already seen these, but for new students, I want to go over quickly some of the couple of properties, a couple of deals that we're currently working on. This first property is a tax deed home, single family home. It's in Florida. We purchased this at the tax deed sale a couple of months ago. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Now this property has a value of about $52,000. We were able to pick up this property for about $10,000. Now with this particular property, we're going to be renting it out, and so we're going to be renting it out at $900 a month. We've already got somebody worked out to do that, and so with this particular property, we're looking to pay off the property within a year, meaning the property will pay for itself within a year. You know, at $900 a month, after 12 months, this property will actually pay for itself. The property down below that is a single family home, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 3 bedroom, 1 bath. It has a value of $65,000. Now with this property, we ended up paying a little bit more. We spent about $20,000, and we're going to be selling this property for about $60,000. So that's going to give about a $36,000 profit margin for us as investors. There's these kind of properties being sold all the time at the tax sale. These are similar to some of the type of properties you can acquire, and there's several different ways you can acquire property. You know, every investor's a little bit different, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight as we go through and really go through the strategies of picking an investment strategy. We have some investors that are looking for interest rate returns. In fact, I don't know if you guys were paying attention to some of the stock market news today, but the stock market took a massive hit, took quite a large hit. If your money was invested in tax and certificates, you wouldn't be worrying about the stock market dropping today. Your investment would be guaranteed. So with tax lien investing, when you're looking to earn interest rate returns, there's really not a better investment strategy. You know, as I've told this story before, but I have one of my family members between 1999 and you know 2010, kind of within that period, within that 10-year period, lost half of their savings in some of the most conservative stocks. You know, many people take a large hit after 9/11. Now, if they were investing in tax and certificates, not only would they have not lost any money, they would have been making a guaranteed interest rate return that can beat about 95% of the investments out there. Not only that, they get a chance of acquiring the property, plus your interest rate is guaranteed. So if their money was invested in tax and certificates, then they wouldn't have lost any of that money. Now finally, after a few years of coaching, they see some of the light and they're starting to invest in tax and certificates. That way their money is guaranteed and is backed by a good real estate property. Now, as far as the secrets of tax lien investing resources, one of your resources is what you're doing tonight. You're taking that first step. I mean, you're on the line tonight, which is awesome, because you're going to be learning weekly different strategies involved with tax sale investing. Each week, I'm going to go over a different strategy within tax lien tax lien and deed investing. 1 week we'll be covering over-the-counter tax liens. 1 week we'll be talking about tax deed auctions. We're going to be talking about different things each week. And in addition to that, you're going to get a chance to review upcoming auctions. The Secrets of Tax Lien Investing website includes our training center, which has all of our videos, our live webinars, forms, scripts, eBooks. We also have our auction calendar, our over-the-counter list database, our online auction database. And so being a member, and you on the line tonight have a membership program at this point to the training center, so it's definitely worth taking advantage of it. There's a lot of information in there that can help you get started with tax lien and deed investing. So what is a tax lien? Well, a tax lien by definition is a claim against an asset. In this particular scenario, we're talking about real property filed by a government taxing authority against a delinquent taxpayer. And there's really three types of tax sales. There's tax lien investing, there's tax deed investing, and there's also redemption deed investing. And we're going to go through and talk about each one of these briefly. I'd like to get through this slide presentation as quickly as we can tonight. That way we have the most amount of time to review some of the upcoming auctions, because there's some pretty cool things happening. So property taxes are called ad valorem taxes in many counties. The local governments, they operate independent of the federal government. So the property taxes represent the single biggest form of revenue for these counties. These property taxes go to pay the education, the roads, the fire, the police, the schools. They really go to pay all of the county utilities. So if people quit paying their property taxes, then the county's going to suffer. Now the actual laws that govern the enforcement of property taxes are going to be written on a state level. So the state's going to decide how they handle their auctions. That's the reason we have so many different types of tax sale systems. We have tax deeds, we have tax liens, we have redemption deed systems. Each state's going to run a little bit different, but the state's going to decide that, and then they're going to give the county guidelines to follow for their auctions. That's the reason some auctions, like in Arizona, for example, their tax lien certificate sales are held all within the month of February. And that's the reason a state like Texas holds auctions every single month, because the state's going to determine what those laws are. They're going to give that information to the county, and the county's going to go within that parameter. So some counties will have more flexibility, other counties will have less flexibility. It just really depends on the state. Now the actual property tax rate is going to be based on a combination of the property value and the county's estimated budget for the year. So the county's going to set up that budget, and that's going to help determine what the actual tax rate is, the property tax rate. And then they're going to use that rate to put assessments on the property within the county. So the county relies on the property tax revenue to function. If the property taxes weren't enforced, there's a good chance that not a lot of people would pay them. And this goes to pay for all of the different things that we can see here in this slide. And so it's very important for the county to be able to get their money. And that's the reason they put together this tax sale system. And this isn't something new. You know, tax sales have been around for literally hundreds of years. In fact, I actually have some old tax deeds and tax certificates from the 1920s, from the 1930s. In fact, part of White Earp's job at the time was to have tax deed auctions to sell property where people didn't pay their property taxes. Now let's go through and let's talk about each one of these investment strategies one by one quickly. First, we're going to talk about tax lien certificates. Now, tax liens are the enforcement method used by the county to collect property taxes. Tax liens are offered to investors that are willing to pay off the delinquent taxes. You could purchase tax liens either at a live auction, you can purchase them over the counter, and within the last couple of years, there's the new opportunity to purchase secondary tax liens. These are tax liens that we're able to purchase from these large banks like Wells Fargo, some of the other banks that we can offer directly to our investors. Now, tax liens, they pay the investor a rate of return. They also give property owners a redemption period to repay the taxes. So if the tax liens redeems, the investor is going to be paid back their principal plus their interest rate return. So if you're investing in a tax lien that earns 10% per year, you're going to make 10% in addition to your principal. If it's making 18%, you're going to make 18%. Now, also, tax liens have foreclosure rights. So if the tax lien is not paid back within the redemption period, then the lien holder can foreclose and become the property's owner. Now, tax deeds, they have the same objective as tax lien states. They are looking to collect delinquent property taxes. But what tax deed states do is they don't sell tax liens on an annual basis. Tax deed states wait until the redemption period is passed, and then the county forecloses on the property and offers the property for sale. So the county is going to collect a deed on the property, and they're going to offer that tax deed at an upcoming auction. Usually those auctions are going to be held live online, and most tax deeds will use a premium bidding method, which is similar to an eBay auction or really to any type of auction. There's going to be an opening bid amount, and the property is going to bid up in price until the high bid is established. And so tax deeds is actually property ownership. When you're looking at tax deeds and thinking about tax deeds, you really need to look at it as a form of real estate. Similar to a mortgage foreclosure sale, or similar to going and buying real estate just on the market. The difference is with a tax deed investing, you have a chance of getting that property for really lower than any other strategy for acquiring real estate. And last, we have something called redemption deeds. Now, redemption deeds are similar to both tax liens and tax deeds, but redemption deeds are really a combination of both. Redemption deeds are tax deeds with a redemption period. So redemption deeds have a redemption period that ranges from 6 months to 2 years. These are states like Texas, like Georgia. Also, redemption deeds usually pay a pretty good return. Texas offers a 25% penalty. Georgia offers a 20% penalty. In addition, some ownership rights are going to be extended to deed holders during the redemption period. Now, this isn't going to be the case in every state, but there is states like Texas where once you purchase that redemption deed, you're going to have some rights within that property during the redemption period. You're just not going to want to put a lot of money into the property. So there's a chance you can get into the property, you can rent out the property. You're just not going to want to put a lot of money into the property because there's still the chance that the property owner could pay off the delinquent taxes and then get back his property. Redemption deeds are a great investment because they offer good returns with a higher chance of acquiring the property. In addition, redemption deeds offer a penalty return instead of an interest rate return. So with tax lien certificates, let's say you purchase a tax lien in Florida on an 18% interest rate. That 18% interest rate is going to be broken up over that year. So you're essentially earning 1.5% per month until that year is up. With redemption deeds, you're going to get that return regardless of when they redeem. So if they redeem a month later, you're going to get that 25% in Texas. If they redeem it, after 1 year or just short of 1 year, you're going to get 25%. And so if the property owner does redeem early, you can actually make a better return because that, you're going to make 25% in 2 months. So if, you purchase a property on Tuesday and they end up paying 2 weeks later, then you're going to make 25% or 20% off your investment. So how do you select an investment strategy? And that's really what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to go through some of the steps that you're going to determine to decide which one of these investment strategies is going to work for you. Are you looking for tax lien investing? Are you looking for tax deed investing? Would you like to try out redemption deeds? This is going to help. These strategies are going to help narrow down this for you so that you can make a decision where you'd like to get started. And so really before even getting into the investor profiles, one of the questions to consider is, are you looking to invest for yield or are you looking to invest for property ownership? Now, if you're looking to invest for yield, you're looking to generate the highest interest rates possible. Primarily you're looking for an interest rate return. You're looking for a guaranteed investment, for a secure investment. Many investors that are investing for yield want to build a retirement account. Maybe they have a self-directed 401k or a self-directed IRA that they want to invest into taxing certificates. Usually it's going to take less time as far as the actual research and purchasing a property, because you're not doing real estate investing. You're just purchasing tax liens or redemption deeds to earn an interest rate return. And they're also going to take less hassle. It's going to be less of a burden. With taxing investing, you invest in those tax liens and you sit back and earn your interest rate return. When the property owner pays you off, then you earn that interest plus your principal, and you put that back into another tax lien. You're just continually rolling over that money as each one of those tax liens redeem, so that your money's always making money. Now, if you're looking to invest for ownership, you're looking to possibly replace your income. You're looking to generate lump sums of cash. It's going to take more time. It's going to be more time extensive. There's going to be more work involved because you're actually acquiring property. Also, one thing to note is as we go throughout the webinar tonight, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them down in the question and answer section. I'll try to stop periodically through the webinar and answer as many of them as I can. If I'm not able to answer every one of the questions, go ahead and send me the question in email form, and I'd be more than happy to send you a reply. So here's really the steps that you're going to go through to making an investment. You can see that you're going to select a strategy. You're going to locate a state and a county. You're going to obtain a tax sale list. Then you're going to narrow down your selection of that list. You're going to perform due diligence, and then you're going to make the investment. And we're going to go through quickly each one of these steps and take you through that funnel so that you can go from not knowing what type of investment you'd like to get started with to making an investment, picking a county, and then actually attending an auction, purchasing, over the counter, whatever your strategy is. So the first thing in determining what state you want to get started with is to go through the investor profiles. Now, each one of you should have a username and password to the member section of the website. Your username is going to be the email address that you provided to me. And then your password is going to be TaxLien, TaxLien, all one word in lowercase. If you go ahead and put your email address and tax lien, you should be able to get into the members section and start reviewing all of the training information. Now, within the members section, we have the profile section, or the profile tab. And we have the investor profiles and we have the state profiles in that section. And so the investor profiles are 7 different strategies that you can pursue. And there's several different types. What you're going to do is you're going to select the profile that fits you best based on your resources and objectives. So we have a high yield tax lien investor. We have an online auction investor. We have a tax deed investor. We have a redemption deed investor. As you go through and review each one of these profiles, you're going to be able to determine this is the profile I'd like to get started with. We're going to have an overview of the profile. And we're also going to have a commitment rating next to the profile of how much time is involved, if there's travel involved. Some of those different questions that you're going to have, it's going to go through and explain exactly what's involved with that investor profile. Also, each one of the investor profiles is going to have a state, is going to have a list of the states where that investment strategy can be utilized. So if we're looking here at the high yield tax lien investor, we can see that it has a list of states that you can use that strategy in. So that's going to help narrow down the states that you want to get started with. You're going to go from 50 states to maybe 10, 15 states, and then from there you can continue narrowing that down till you have 1 or 2 states you'd like to get started with. Once you've determined your investor profile, then you can start reviewing the state profiles to determine which profile you want to get started with. Each state's going to have a profile that explains how that investment strategy works within that state, the rate of return, the foreclosure information, the bidding types, the redemption periods, if they have assignment purchasing, the auction dates, the state law and code. And so each state profile you can go through and determine exactly what's required with that state to get started with investing within that area. So essentially what you're doing, guys, is you're going to start with 50 states. You know, there's about 3,300 counties and municipalities. From there, you're going to select your investor profile. Now, once you've selected your investor profile, that's going to narrow down the amount of states that you're going to research. So you may go from 50 states down to 10 or 12 states. From there, you're going to review the state profiles so that you can pick a state to get started with. So if you're interested in investing in an online tax lien investing, then you're going to see some of the different states that are available, you know, New Jersey, Maryland, Florida, Colorado, Arizona. And then from there, you're going to pick a state to get started with. Maybe you decide to choose Florida. Now, once you choose Florida, then you may have 50 or 10, or just depending on the state, a certain amount of counties within that state that you can use that strategy. And for an online tax lien investor, that's actually going to narrow down those states even more, because about 75% of tax lien auctions in Florida are held online. So that's going to narrow that down as well. And then from there, you can pick 1 or 2 counties to get started with. So as we go through this, as we go through each one of these steps, you can see that we've selected a strategy by picking our investor profile. We've located a state by going through the state profiles, and then from there we can go ahead and pick a county to get started with. After we picked a county, then we're going to want to obtain a tax sale list. And there's really a few different ways that you can get that tax sale list. Of course, you can get that off of the Secrets website. You can contact the counties directly, or you can get that information off the county websites. Now, once you've acquired that tax sale list, then you're going to narrow down your selection of the list. And we're going to go through some of these different steps, and we're actually going to go through and show you how to narrow down a list by using the quick glance method. We're not going to go through all those steps, but we're going to do it live with an actual tax sale list that we're going to be reviewing of an upcoming auction. So as far as types of tax sale lists, there's really 2 types of tax sale lists. There's pre-auction lists. So these are a list of properties before they go to auction, before the auction takes place. So if there's an auction coming up, you're going to get that tax sale list so that you can review some of the upcoming properties. We're going to go through and review some upcoming pre-auction lists this evening. There's also post-auction lists. So these can be assignment purchasing or over-the-counter or secondary market tax liens. These are tax liens or tax deeds that are available after the auction has taken place. So maybe they didn't get bid on in the case of assignment purchasing or over-the-counter. With secondary market liens, these are tax liens that were purchased from one of these large banks that are available to investors. And each tax sale list is going to be categorized according to the enforcement system used. So there can be tax lien list, which are going to give you tax and certificates that are available. There's going to be tax deed list, and these are properties that you can essentially pay off the delinquent taxes and become the property owner. There's also redemption deed list or struck off list in Texas. So with redemption deeds, there's not as much opportunity to purchase over the counter, but there is over the counter investing in Texas through struck off tax deeds. So after you've picked that list, then you're really going to narrow down the selection. And we're going to go through and look at the quick glance system, or at least kind of use that strategy as we go through and narrow down a tax sale list here in a few minutes. After you've narrowed down the selection, then you're going to actually perform the due diligence. So that's where you're going to go through and research the list and find properties, tax and certificates, tax deeds that you're interested in. So once we've narrowed down the selection of the list, then we're going to do the due diligence. And the first thing we're going to do with the due diligence is we're going to research the county records. You know, the county websites and the property records is really one of our greatest tools as investors. It's going to have the information that we need. Now we can see here's an example of a of a county website. We can see that there's a department right there that we can click on. We can click on the assessor's office. We can click on the treasurer's office. We're going to go through and quickly talk about each one of these departments. And also, in addition to that, as you're reviewing the state profiles, it's going to let you know within there, as you go through and read that, what division or one department is going to handle the property taxes. So if the property taxes or the tax sale is going to be handled by the treasurer, the tax collector, maybe it's handled by the clerk of the court, it's going to let you know within there, so you know where to research as you review the individual county the county websites. So let's go ahead and look at some of these questions. Okay, when selecting a county in which to invest, how important are the cities that exist within the county of interest? Should that have any influence on the investor's decision on that county? That's a great question. When selecting a county, obviously you're going to want to have some cities within that area, because cities are going to mean people, which means properties, which means a better opportunity. But even more than cities or anything like that, what I'm mostly concerned about is I'm concerned about property value, because you can acquire a property within one county and within another county, and there's still going to be profit as long as there's property value in there. So the cities can help determine that a little bit. But if I can make more money off a property that's maybe in outside the city limits versus within the city limits, then I'm going to invest in that property. And so really that's one of the primary things you're looking for when you're looking at investing. Location is not going to be as important as actual property value, and also usability. What can I do with this property? Can I turn around and sell it quickly? Can I rent the property out? And so that's really a great question. You're definitely going to want to research the cities within that area. It's going to give you a better idea of what the real estate markets are within that market, what the real estate prices are within that market. But the primary thing you're going to be looking for is the actual property value. Okay, what is the worst case or the ugly side of investing in tax liens? Now, with investing in tax lien certificates, really the ugly side of investing in tax liens would be investing in tax liens with no value. I've actually never had an investor or a student that I've worked with lose money in tax lien certificates. Because as long as you're investing in tax liens with value, then you're safe. I mean, the tax lien is going to be protected by state law. It's also going to be protected by the property it's attached to. So if you purchase a $500 tax lien in Arizona, that the property value is only worth $500, and there's nothing but rattlesnakes and sagebrush, then that's not going to be a good investment. But if you're investing a $500 tax lien in a building lot that's worth $40,000, then that's going to be a safe investment, because your money's going to be protected against the property. So with tax lien investing, it really is one of the safest investment strategies out there. It's not going to be affected by the market. It's not going to be affected, by anything really than just what that property value is. And so as you're looking at investing in tax lien certificates, as long as you're investing in properties with value, then your investment is always going to be safe, because either you're going to earn the interest rate return, and the property owner is going to pay back the county, which in turn cuts you a check for your principal in addition to your interest rate return, or you're going to get a chance to acquire the property. And so if the property has value versus the amount that you're investing in, then you could even turn around and sell that property within a short period of time and make a good profit. For example, let's say there's a $10,000 tax lien on a $100,000 property. you know, that $10,000 is backed at a property that's worth $100,000. So even if you were to acquire the property, and let's say that you wanted to fire sell it, you know, you wanted to sell it as quickly as possible, get it moved out within the next 30 days, so you list it at 50% of the property's value, you sell it for $50,000, that $10,000 still made $40,000. So with tax lien investing, you know, there's really not an ugly side to it as long as you know what you're doing, and as long as you're investing in good properties and that have value. It's really one of the safest investment strategies, and that's what initially attracted me to it. Because you know, there isn't really an ugly side of tax sale investing as long as you're educated. I mean, if you're going out and purchasing, you know, tax liens on junk property, then you could possibly lose your money because worst case scenario, you're going to acquire that property and the property's junk. And so, you know, with tax lien investing, it really is a pretty good strategy because there isn't really a lot of downside, and really the only downside is if you're investing in tax liens that are on property with no value. Okay. Alrighty, let's go ahead and go through, and we'll try to answer. We've got quite a few questions coming in, so I'm probably not going to get a chance to answer them all. Just send me an email. My email address is there at the bottom of Secrets of Tax Lien Investing. You've probably received some emails from me. Send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions that I'm not able to get to tonight. Okay, so how do you find the county websites? One of the best websites to use is NACO.org. In fact, I was just on NACO today, and over the last day or two, they've completely changed their website. So still getting a little bit used to it, but it looks like it's in a lot of ways even easier to use than before. But we're going to go through and we'll show you how to use NACO. NACO is the National Association of Counties. And so this is the website, this is the association for county governments. And so because of that, they're going to have some of the most updated, or really the most updated information that's going to direct us to county websites. You know, I've been using NACO for probably about 10 years, and it's really the only, you know, major resource that I use to connect me to county governments. And that's really what we're going to be looking for. We're looking for county websites. As a tax sale investor, your ability to navigate county websites is really going to be key to being a good tax lien or tax deed investor. Now, once you get to that county website, there's going to be county officials. And the county officials are probably one of the greatest unused resources by many tax sale investors. You know, their job is to collect the property taxes and handle the sale. So you may have somebody whose job is completely handling the tax liens and handling the auction. They're going to be a pretty good person to talk to find out more about the tax sale, to find out more about the tax lien properties in their system than probably anyone, because that's part of their job. They can really be one of the greatest resources to an investor. In addition to that, every county has them. Every county is going to have somebody that's in charge of collecting the property taxes, of conducting the sale, of assessing property, a property appraiser, a property assessor. And so they're going to understand how the property is assessed within that area better than anyone else you can talk to. And so in addition to that, they're available to us because that's part of their job. You know, part of their job is speaking with the public, and so we can give them a call, we can send them emails, and we can use their resources, use their knowledge as a resource for us. They're really an untapped resource for tax sale investors. They know the area, they know the tax sale system, they know the property's value, and so that's one of the tools that you're going to want to utilize as a tax sale investor. Really, the key to conducting due diligence for tax sale investors is the ability to navigate county websites. The county websites are going to contain the information that we need as investors. They're going to have the tax information, so the property taxes, what property taxes are paid, what property taxes are owed. They're going to have the property data, things like assessment information, square feet, zoning. All that information is going to be contained within the property records. They're going to have maps many times. In fact, most counties have some type of map system that you can use to actually map each one of the properties. They're going to have the tax sale list. They're going to have the auction information. That's the reason I always stress and talk about researching county websites. That's part of the reason that, after we go through this presentation each time, I spend a good portion of the time going through and looking at live auctions with you guys online, because your ability to go through this process is going to make you a proficient tax sale investor. As you go through and review upcoming auctions, if you go through and review county records, it's going to become easier and easier for you. And so your ability to go through and review a tax sale list, something that may take you an hour, when you're first getting started, after you have some experience under your belt, may take you 5 or 10 minutes to do that same amount of work. Because you're going to kind of have a process that you go through to review county records, to find property information. And as you get better at it, it's going to be easier and easier to do it from one county to the next. Because even though all the counties are different, their systems are going to be very, very similar. The property appraiser, the assessor, they may call it by different names, but that person or that department is in charge of doing property evaluations. The person that collects the property taxes, that could be the treasurer, the tax collector, the finance department, whoever it is, they're the person that usually is going to conduct the tax sale. And so even though the names may change from one county to the next, as you understand the systems and you understand the strategy, you can go through and review the county websites and pull out the information that you need as an investor. You can pull out, what the property is valued at, what the assessment is, pull out a map of the property, maybe able to find pictures of the property. The county websites are really the greatest tool for us as investors. Now, usually, there's going to be two departments that we're most interested in once we go to the county website. The first department is going to be the treasurer. It could be called a different name. It could be called a tax collector. It could be called the finance department, as I mentioned before. But it's the person or department that handles the property taxes. Usually the person that handles the property taxes will also handle the sale. And if they don't handle the sale, they're going to be able to tell us who does handle the sale. They're going to have the information that we need most of the time about upcoming auctions, about the tax sale list, about over-the-counter opportunities. They're also going to have record on the property taxes that are paid. So if you're looking at over-the-counter tax liens and you want to find out how many other tax liens are on the property, the treasurer tax collector is where you're going to find that information. You're going to look up the property tax and you'll be able to see, oh, well, there's 2 other tax liens on this property. So using the knowledge of the treasurer tax collector is going to help you prepare for the sale. Don't be afraid to send them an email and ask a question. Don't be afraid to contact them by phone. We have some phone scripts that you can use, or kind of a phone script example. This is a script that you can read or kind of custom to whoever you're talking to. We also have email scripts that are available that you can use to send out emails to find out particular information about the sale. In addition to the treasurer, there's also the property appraiser or the assessor. This is the person that conducts property evaluations on every piece of real estate within the county. So they're going to take every piece of real estate, regardless of how small the property is, how large the property is, and they're going to put an assessment value on that property. They're going to have property records. So, if let's say it's a single-family home, they're going to have, how large is the home, how many bedrooms, how many baths. They're going to keep and update all of the real estate records, and they're going to have some type of partial search tool, or most counties are going to have some type of partial search tool or property record tool that we can use to review the property records. Most counties will have a partial search tool, and so we'll take that parcel number that we get off the tax sale list, we'll type it in that partial search tool, and click enter and pull up the property records. This is really one of the first areas that you're going to go to research the property. The property records are going to include the lot, the size, the improvement, the zoning, the values, the maps, and also some websites, and it's becoming more common, actually include photos of the property. So this information is going to give you a good idea if the property has value. If we pull up a property and we can see, well, there's a single family home worth 100 grand on it. We can see a map of the property. We have the address. We're going to know a lot about that property. We're going to know, what the assessed value is. Now, the assessed value isn't always going to be what the market value is, but we can at least see if the property has value. From there, we can take that address and we can research it on Google Maps and get a straight view of the property. We can take that address and search on Zillow.com and see what real estate is selling within that area and what they estimate the property value to be. And so the real estate records is where we're going to get the information to do the additional due diligence that we need on an individual property. As I mentioned before, the counties are going to contain or have a parcel search tool. You can usually search by different criteria. You can search by the parcel number. Many times you can search by an address or owner information. But usually the parcel number is going to be the easiest to find the property. That number is really like that parcel number is really like a social security number for the property. So you're able to copy and paste or type that parcel number in and pull up the property records. Also, many of the county records now contain maps. These county records are going to have links to maps. So as you go through and you're reviewing county records, be sure to click on all the information that's available. They may have drawings of the property if it has some type of structure. They may have, links that you can go to an interactive map and with satellite image. And so you can see exactly where those property lines are, what the property looks like in conjunction with the other properties in the area. Okay, so now we're going to get to the fun part of the webinar after we kind of went through some of those slides to help you determine exactly how to get started. And so if you haven't started investing before and you really don't know where to get started, I'd definitely recommend going onto the website and going through and reviewing the investor profiles. From there, start reviewing some of the state profiles. Once you've picked a state to get started with, then it's pretty easy to start researching tax sale list or finding tax sale list for that particular state. Once you found that tax sale list, then you can go through and review the list and pull out properties that you'd like to do some additional due diligence on. Once you've found those properties that you're interested in, based on the, usually it's going to be based on the amount that you have to invest. So if you have $10,000 to invest, then you're going to take that, you're going to know that you can look for properties between a certain point. If you'd like to break that $10,000 and maybe purchase 2 or 3 tax liens with it, if you're looking to acquire real estate, then you may look for, one tax deed that you can invest in. But that's going to help narrow that down, and we actually have some other webinars in the training center that you can go through that actually take you through that process and talk about some of the different investment brackets. One of the webinars goes through and talks about all the investment brackets and brackets each one of those. Also, it goes through and talks about the quick glance method. So if you haven't gone through or listened to that webinar, go back and review the bracketing and quick glance view webinar so that you can know better how to attack a tax sale list. Go through and research that tax sale list. So let's go ahead and let's start researching some of the upcoming property. Okay. Just looking over some of the questions real quick. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and let's start reviewing some upcoming auctions. That's my old blog, wrong one. Okay, here's Secrets of Tax Lien Investing. So once you go ahead and click on that members section, it's going to ask you for your username and password. If you haven't logged in yet, you're just going to go ahead and put your, let me go ahead and, you're going to go ahead and put your username and password in there, and then you can go ahead and click on the members section, which is going to take you to the different links that you can click on for the training center, the auction calendar, the online auctions, the over-the-counter list, and the state profiles. You can also click the profiles up here as well, where we'll have the different investor profiles that you can click on right here, and then down here below, and then also you'll have the state profiles that you can click on right here. So you can go through and review these investor profiles. You can see we have the profile overview, tax lien auction profile, online tax lien profile, over-the-counter profile, tax lien, tax deed auction, pre-sale tax deed, over-the-counter tax deed, redemption deed, and secondary market. So you can go ahead and click on any of these profiles and learn more about that particular strategy. You know, once you've decided a particular state, or once you've decided a profile, then you can go down and click on any of these individual states and review the tax sale system. So we'll click on Michigan. It's going to go through and give us an overview of how Michigan conducts their auctions. We can go ahead and review the bidding types, the deed information. We can see the auction dates, helpful tips, information about Title Check LLC. When they see this is the company that handles the tax sale for many counties, the Michigan Department of Resources, Michigan Land Bank, the Taxing Authority. So you're going to get a pretty good idea of how Michigan, or whatever state you're looking at, conducts their auctions, and then from there you can start reviewing individual cities or counties within that auction, or upcoming list or auctions that you can find within that state. So if you were to go ahead and click on, let's go back here and click on the training center. I'm just going to go through this real quick, just because you here that are on the line tonight have received a username and password, because this is the members webinar, and so you know, I've only sent it to people that I've set up with the username and password on the website. You can see, of course, here you can register for the webinar. This is, of course, today. We'll be putting tomorrow the new webinar link, so next week you can come here to the training center and then click on the webinar to sign up for next week's webinar. We also have the video training center here. If you click on here, we'll have the video training of the week. So this will be, you know, this is last week's webinar. This webinar that we're doing tonight will be put up here. And then down here below, you can see we have the weekly webinar trainings. These are the long trainings, anywhere between an hour to 2 hour. We have the short trainings here, and I'm adding quite a few more. I just need to add them. So from here, you know, we can go ahead and look at any of these dates and click on to review some of these webinars. For example, if you were interested in how to read a tax sale list, we can see back on June 9th. This is where we're going to go over investment brackets. We're going to go over the quick glance method of researching a tax list. So if you don't know how to read a tax sale list, that would be a benefit to go ahead and watch that webinar, because we're going to go through and talk about how to do that. You can also, of course, see we have the blog. And also, in addition to that, guys, I'm not sure, all of you may not be on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, but if you are, go ahead and follow us on Twitter, because I'm going to be putting out information every day about upcoming auctions, about lists, about just different things in tax sale investing. And so if you're part of Twitter, it's worth it to go ahead and follow me, because you're going to, you know, I'm going to be giving you guys information every day about upcoming auctions, about properties, about opportunities. You can follow us on YouTube. We're going to be start doing several new videos each week about different things that are happening for that week, different auctions to look forward to, different things that you can look at. And then, of course, you can follow us on Facebook as well. course, then you can also review the blog. This is where we're going to put information as well. So there's going to be several different things that can help you on a weekly basis know about some of the things that are happening within the tax sale market. So let's go ahead and let's start reviewing some of the upcoming auctions. And we're going to review some of the online auctions to get started with. The reason I like to do online auctions is mostly it gives you guys the opportunity, regardless of where you live, that if you wanted to participate in some of these auctions, you could. Now, the process with the live auction is going to be very similar. The difference is you're going to get that tax sale list, you're going to review the list, and then you're going to go attend the auction in person. But the method is going to be really the same. It's just with an online auction, everyone has the chance to bid on those properties versus a live auction at the county courthouse within your own area, or you travel to an auction. Then you're usually going to have just people within that area, investors within that market that are actually attending the sale. So online auctions gives us a chance to look at property that anyone could bid on, including you on the line. And online auctions, even though they're available to everyone, that doesn't mean that you can't acquire good property. Those two properties that we looked at earlier today that we were able to acquire, those two single-family homes in Florida, those were purchased by attending and bidding at an online auction. And so there's definitely good opportunities with online auctions, and it's the way a lot of the counties are going. So if we click on the tax deed auctions, we can see some of the tax deed auctions coming up. And the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at bidforassets.com. You can see these different California auctions. Most of the California tax sales are going to be held by Bid for Assets. San Bernardino County and Kern County use Grant Street Group, but the rest of the counties use Bid for Assets. And Bid for Assets is really kind of like an eBay for county governments. They sell land, they sell machinery, they sell if they had a big Marshall sale and the Marshall took a bunch of boats, and I've seen one sale where there was all kinds of top of the line cars and boats and things like that, yachts that were purchased or acquired through getting them from some type of large drug dealer or something like that. So there's all kinds of different things that they sell on Bid for Assets, but they also sell tax liens or tax deed properties. So we can see here, here if we just go to Bid for Assets, we can see some of the different tabs, but then there's this county tax sale. So we're going to go ahead and click on that, and we can see some of the upcoming auctions. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through the process quickly with you of reviewing a tax sale list. So we're going to look at Tulare County. We can see that the auction is going to be held on August 6th through the 10th. So if we go ahead and click on that link, we can see information about the sale. We can see that there's 164 tax defaulted properties. The auction is going to go from August 6th through August 10th. There's our list. We can see that the opening bid starts at $1,300. That's the lowest bid on the lowest property. And then down here we can click on all this information to tell us more about the sale. So if we're serious about bidding in this sale, we definitely want to go through and review all this information. The laws regarding non-bidder on bidder non-payment, the county terms of sale, the county facts. And then down here below we have the property list in Excel and the property list in PDF. Then below that we have the online records. Now you can see that there's several different links here that we can click on. And if we were to click on this link, it's going to pull up a certain amount of properties. And what this is called a batch. A batch is the way that a county takes a tax sale list. So let's say there's 100 lists on that county auction. They're not going to sell all of those 100 properties at one time. And so they set them up in batches. And so we can see that this particular batch, let me go ahead and put this back up quickly. We can see that this batch starts at 12 o'clock. This batch starts at 12:15. This batch starts at 12:30, at 12:45. And so usually it's just going to be a set amount of deeds or liens, it could be 10, 20, whatever that batch is, that they're going to sell within that time frame, and it's going to close in that time frame as well. So it's going to close, and it's going to open earlier, and then the next one's going to open, and then the next one's going to open. And so it just gives a way for investors to bid on individual properties. And once those properties sell, go on to the next batch. So you're going to know, well, I acquired this property in the first batch. I'm not going to try to purchase some of the properties later on. Or if you didn't acquire the property in the first batch, then you still have your money to go to maybe some of the other properties that you're interested in down the list. So if we're to go ahead and click on this Excel link and download the tax sale list, it's going to pull up this list like we can see here. Okay. So here we're looking at a tax sale list. This is the tax sale list for Tulare County, and as we review this list, we're going to look for certain information. Now, as we talked about in some of the other webinars about setting investment brackets, you're going to bracket your certain investments so that you know exactly the individual properties that you want to look at. So if you have $10,000 to invest, then you're not going to spend time looking at properties that are over $10,000. If you have, whatever that bracket is, if you have $30,000 to invest, then you can look at properties anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000 based on whatever your bracket is. And so once you know what your bracket is, it's going to be a lot easier to go through and review a tax sale list. Now with this list, we can see some information. First, pull that back up. First, we're going to be able to see this APN number. First, we're actually going to see the auction ID. In addition to that, we can see that each one of these auction IDs has a link that we can click on. So that's pretty helpful. Not all lists are going to have that, which means we can click on that link, and it's going to pull up this property in Bid for Assets for us to review. So we can see the auction ID. We can also see the APN number. Now this is the parcel number. So if we go to the county record, we'd go ahead and copy and paste that parcel number so that we can review the property record. The county item, this is just a list, starting 1, 2, just a list of the properties. Here's the legal description on the property. Now once we get past the legal description, then we're going to get to the minimum bid amount. So this is the amount that these properties are going to start with. So we can see, 24, 43, 96. And as we go down this list, we can see the different opening bid amounts. This is going to be the first thing we're going to look at because we're going to know whatever the bracket is that we've determined. If that's 5,000, if that's 10,000, if that's whatever that bracket is. And of course, we're looking at a tax deed list in California, so the minimum bid is going to be a little bit higher than it will be in other places. In addition, we're looking at deeds, so that's going to make it a little bit higher as well, because a tax deed is usually going to be 3 to 5 years worth of delinquent property taxes, where a taxing certificate is just 1 year's worth of delinquent taxes. But we're going to first look at that minimum bid amount here, and then also we're going to have the property address here. And so what I like to do, guys, when I'm going through and quickly looking at the list is I'm going to go ahead and delete things that don't really matter to me. So as far as this, the auction date when it ends, I'm not really concerned about that now. So I'm going to go ahead and, erase that. From there, we can go ahead and look and see, okay, here's a property with an address. That means that we can look the property up. This property says no site address. So we know this property is a property that we can't do a street view on. We can't use Google Maps or Google Earth to look up the property. From there, we can see this improvement amount. This is going to tell us what the improvements are. This is going to tell us if there's a structure on the property. So we see this first tax deed has a $24,000 opening bid, It has an improvement value of $86,000. It has a land value of $69,000, and it has a total assessed value of $156,000. So what we're going to be looking at is that minimum bid amount versus that total assessed value. So if you could acquire a property that's worth $156,000 for $24,000, would that be a good investment? Well, in my opinion, that's a pretty good bid to value ratio. You know, you could make anywhere between between $100,000 to $125,000 if you were able to acquire the property at $24,000. So if we were to go ahead and click on this number, we're going to pull up the property record. Here it is. We can see that a $24,600 minimum bid, a $100 bid increment. If we continue to scroll down, we're going to see information here. We can click on the parcel map and see where this property is located on the map. We also have the address listed right here. Then down here below, we'll also have that same information that we saw on the tax sale list. So what we're going to do is we're going to go online, and we're going to go ahead and look up the property. And we can see that it pulls up this property here. So we see the property information here. We see the address. If we go ahead and click on the Earth view, we're going to see the satellite view of image of the property, the overhead view. So we see here's the road on the property. We can see that it's probably this property right here. We also can go ahead and click on the street view of the property. So we can see the property located out here. A little bit of a not the perfect view because it's back there set in the woods a little bit, but we can tell that this is within the Kings National Park. So this is really some type of summer home. We can see Kings National Park, and then we have the address listed right there. So if we want to get a better, we have an idea of what the assessed value is at about 160 grand. Let's go ahead and see what Zillow has to say about the property. We've got that address. We can go ahead and click in paste. And we can go ahead and see that there's an estimated on this property for about $216,000. We can see it's a 334 square foot single family home. We have the address listed there right there. We can click down there below and see if there's any additional information here. So, we're looking at a property here that could probably worth anywhere between $200,000 or so with a $24,000 opening bid. That's a pretty good bid to value ratio. Really what we're looking for with tax deeds is you're looking to acquire the property for obviously as cheap as you can get it. Tax deeds will sell for anywhere between about 10% of the property's value to about 50% of the property's value. And so you're going to usually want to stay within that range. If the property is a little bit better, a little bit more valuable, as the property goes up in value, then really you can go up in the value that the price that you're going to pay for the property. For example, if you're looking at a property or that's only worth about $30,000, then you're going to want to stay at the lower end of that 10 to 20, 30% bracket because there's not as much profit to be made. So if we're looking at a $30,000 property, we may want to keep that bid to about 25%. Because there's still going to be good profit to be made on that property. But then if you look at a property that's worth $500,000, even if you were to go up to $250,000 to buy a nice $500,000 custom home, there's $250,000 worth of profit in that property for you to make a profit. So as the property goes up in value, then you can increase the amount that you're willing to pay as far as the percentage of the property because there's more room for profit. And that's kind of the way that I look at properties as I'm going through and looking at tax sale list. Just going through and looking at some of the questions quick. Okay. I'll answer those here in a minute. So, as we're looking at this tax sale list, We're going to go through and we're going to review properties that fit within our budget. We're also going to look for properties that have a good value. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to have an improvement to be a good investment. In fact, I have investors that only invest in land, that are only looking for good, valuable land lots that they can turn around and sell. You know, they don't want the hassle of worrying about fixing a property up. You know, with a lot, they could be living in California and buy property in Florida, and all they need to do is throw a sign in the front yard and start selling the property. You know, if there's structures, they may need to go a little bit different route. It's going to take a little bit more research. So, you know, when you're looking at doing tax deed investing, really the most important thing is can you make a profit, and what will that profit be? You know, I have investors that talk to me all the time. I only want single-family homes. Well, you can do that, but the chances are you might be paying a little bit more because it is a single-family home. I mean, if I can acquire $100, you know, two different properties. One's a single-family home worth $100,000. One's a great building lot for $100,000, but one's going to cost me $50,000 to purchase, and one's going to cost me $20,000 to purchase, and I can sell them just as quickly. Maybe even sell the land for, you know, even in a shorter period of time, then I may purchase that land property because there's more profit to be made in it. Now, that doesn't discourage you from purchasing single-family homes or structured properties, because they're a good investment as well. But what the most important thing to look at is, what is the profit margin? What is, you know, how much profit? What is the property value? And if there's a good property value, then you know, it's important to be looking at any investment, because that's the most important thing for us as investors, is to be able to make money, to make a return on our investment. So as we're going through this list, you know, we're not interested in properties that don't have a site address. Now, if you're a seasoned investor and the property still has a high value with no site address, then you could do some more due diligence in it, because you may be able to make some good money on there. You know, it may not have a site address, but it may be a valuable piece of land or a large tract of land. So you can do more due diligence. But if you're a brand new investor, you probably want to stick to properties with a site address. So we can go ahead and you know, delete this property. We can see these ones here with no site address. We can go ahead and delete those properties as well. And so as we're going down this list, it's going to narrow down this list. You know, if we were to go through and erase some of these ones that don't have the site address, and I'm not going to do it for all of it because I'm just doing it as an example, but that's going to shorten the amount of properties that we can research. And as we look at this list, we can see that there's lots of opportunities. You know, we can see, you know, here's a $24,000 worth 56. You know, this property here is $14,700. We can see it has $97,000 improvement, $32,000 land value worth $129. That looks like a decent property. Let's go ahead and click on that link quick. So we have the address listed right here. What I'm going to do is just going to go ahead and copy that address. I'm going to go back and really, Google Maps or Google Earth is such a great system for looking at property, because you can see here that I don't have the whole address, but it was still able to find the property for me. We can see the satellite image right here of the property. We can see that it's located right here. And of course we have the street view. We're going to go ahead and click on the street view, and we can see that it's this property right here. You know, really looks like a clean little property. Oh. So we can go ahead and zoom in if we wanted, and we can see the property located right here. Then we can also go ahead and take that address and see what the property value is. And this is really the process that you're going to go through as you review tax sale list. So if we go ahead and type in that parcel number, we can see that this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath worth $173,000, 1,940 square feet, and we can see that it last sold in April 2005 for $150,000. So we can get a pretty good idea of what this property is, and you can ask yourself, you know, is $150,000, $200,000, $178,000 property with a $14,000 opening bid. Is that a good investment? Well, yeah, it's a great investment. You know, depending on doing some additional due diligence on this property, you know, what could you bid it up to? Well, it really depends on how much profit you're looking to make. But even if you were to bid this property up to $50,000, is there still you know, room for profit? Yeah. You know, there's probably over $100,000 worth of profit, even if you bid from $14,000 up to $50,000. And so, you know, this would be another example of a good property. And we can see all of these different properties that are available. Here's one, 47,000, 135, 51, 398 assessed value. Looks like another good property. See one here, $20,000 opening bid. Here's one with a $13,000 opening bid worth $70,000. We can see that this property here has an address, but it looks to be about a 5-acre parcel of land worth $70,000. So this property, we can see just here from the list that there's not a structure on it, that it's some type of vacant land. Here's another vacant land. Here's a property right here, is 16.7 acres. Worth $369,000. Here's another property, and what we could go through if we had the time, or if we were researching this, we can go through and look at each one of these properties and figure out more about each one of them. Here we see a $24,000 opening bid, worth $398,000. Let's go ahead and click on that one real quick, and we'll go look at some other auctions. The address listed right there, we can see it's 4.81 acres. But we do see that there's improvement and land value. So we can see the street view here. We can see the overhead view. It looks like to be, you know, it's out there in farmland to a degree. Let's go ahead and click on the street view and see what this property is. Okay, so we can see that this, you know, isn't your single family home. This is some type of commercial property. You see there's a shop, some semis, loading dock here. Looks like some type of business right there. Apache something. But, you know, does this property have value? Well, sure, it has value. You know, if this goes to tax sale, this could possibly be a pretty good property, especially at the price point that we're looking at. You know, $24,000. And so we can see all of these different properties that we could go through and research and see their values here. You know, here's one worth $228,000, $31,000 opening bid. Here's one with $55,000 worth $471,000. Let's click on that one real quick as well. So it's got a $55,000, but we can see it has an assessed value of $472,000. We have the address listed right here, and we'll just go through that same process. Now, with commercial properties, you're not going to be able to do a Zillow search on them because Zillow only does structured properties. But here, we can see that we're actually looking at some type of gas station. Okay, so we're looking at the Quick Stop. You know, this Quick Stop is going up for tax sale auction with an opening bid of $55,000. It has an assessed value of $472,000. Now, usually your assessed value is going to be lower than the actual market value. So this property is probably worth over $500,000, starting out at $55,000. So we're really looking at about a 10% bid to value ratio as far as that opening bid amount. This property is starting at about 10% of its value. So there's a huge opportunity to make profit in a property like this. Also, one thing we can do is with Google Maps or Google Earth is nice, is especially if you're looking in a particular neighborhood, is you can kind of go through the neighborhood and see more information about the property. As we can see this quick stop right here. So there's all types of different properties going up for auction. I mean, we've seen single family homes, we've seen large valuable lots and land, we've seen commercial properties from that the shop property to even this gas station quick stop. There's all kind of different properties that'll come up for the tax sale. Now let's go ahead. We're going to erase this real quick. And there's one other auction coming up in San Mateo area. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. And then we're going to go look at some of the other auctions coming up. So we can see San Mateo right here. We're going to go ahead and click on that. And this is going to be the San Francisco area. So if we were to go ahead and pull up the map, pull up the Excel list, we're going to go through really kind of that same process that we went through before and looked at some of these upcoming auctions. So let me go ahead and let's answer a couple of these questions. Okay. Question about the secondary tax liens that we're able to offer to my investors. Yes, the secondary tax liens that I'm able to offer are tax lien certificates. And so these aren't deeds. These aren't properties that have already been acquired, have already gone through the foreclosure process. These are tax lien certificates that are past their redemption period, that are ready to foreclose immediately. And so what that allows the investor to do is that allows the investor to determine how soon they'd like to start the foreclosure process depending on their investment strategy. If their strategy is to earn interest rate return, then they're probably going to hold on to that tax lien certificate for a year before they start the foreclosure process or start the collection process. That way they own, they have a full year's worth of interest earned on that tax lien certificate. If your investment strategy is to acquire property, then you're going to start that foreclosure process immediately so that you can go ahead and either acquire the property or send it to a deed sale. For example, we have, well, in fact, they're pretty much, this is the last week to be able to purchase them before the company actually forecloses on the remaining ones we have. But these were mall properties, mall stores in Dade County, Florida. So these are in Miami, right next to the airport, the Sheraton Hotel. There's a large mall there, and these are mall properties. And so with these tax lien certificates, you can go ahead and purchase the tax lien and immediately start foreclosing on that tax lien to send it to the deed sale. In other areas, the strategy is different. So, with Connecticut, you can go ahead and start that foreclosure process, which we are able to help you with, and automatically send it to the deed sale. So within a shorter period of time, you're going to either be able to acquire the property or you're going to make a good interest rate on your money. But this is really the best way to acquire property through tax lien certificates. Because if you were to purchase a tax lien at the auction, you're going to have to wait for that entire redemption period before you can start the foreclosure process. With the tax liens that we purchase, when we go to the bank and purchase, a $5 million portfolio or a $10 million portfolio of tax lien certificates, we're looking for tax liens, and we go through and review each tax lien so that we're purchasing tax liens that are on good property, have a good bid, good bid to value ratio, or good lien to property ratio, and also tax lien certificates that are past their redemption period so you can start foreclosing immediately. And so that's really what secondary market tax liens are. It's either the chance to acquire the property or get your interest rate returned, but it's going to shorten that time frame that you're going to have to wait. So you're going to wait anywhere from 3 months to a year depending on the tax lien certificate versus waiting several years before you start the foreclosure process. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this list. Now with this list, we're going to actually see quite a bit less information than the last list that we were looking at. It may be because the auction's a little bit off. Usually California has pretty good information. But even with this, we still have information here that can help us determine which properties we want to focus on. We can see that there's many properties here that don't have any addresses. And so for tonight, we can see that they also have some pretty high opening bid amounts. So these are probably some pretty valuable properties, especially within the San Francisco area of Florida. But we're going to go ahead and delete these so that we can focus on the properties with addresses. And so we can see these different properties here that have addresses. And if we had time, I can go ahead and delete it. And we would have, going from 120 properties, we would narrow that down to maybe 20 properties. We can also see the minimum bid amount here. We can see the property address and the area. So we can see this one. Let's go ahead and look at this one in South San Francisco, 20 Bay Park Circle. We can see this property has a $27,000 opening bid amount. And we're going to go ahead and click on this link to pull up the property record. Now once we clicked on the link, we can see that there's a picture of the property right here. We also have some links we can click on here to pull up the parcel image of the property. There we can see a picture of this property. It looks like a pretty nice single family home. We can click on the parcel map as well to pull up the overhead map view. But most important, we have the address right here. So we're going to go ahead and copy that address. We're going to go back to our Google Maps. We're going to go ahead and copy and paste that information in. And we're going to start reviewing the property. So we were able to go ahead and pull up this property. We can see that it's a single family home. We can see that it looks like it's in a pretty nice location up here on the hillside. If we were to go ahead and zoom in, we can see that here's the property right here. And so you can see that it's down this little bit of a private driveway. And so we're really looking at the back side of the property right here. Now from there, we want to go ahead and review the property records on Zillow.com. So if we were to go ahead and type in the property records, we can see that this property has an estimated value of $1.2 million. And so we're looking at a property here that has a $27,000 opening bid amount that's worth 1.2. That's a pretty incredible property. I would imagine that the property owner will probably pay off that $27,000 before they lose it at the auction. But if not, that's a great property to bid on. Even if that property bid up to $200,000 or $300,000, there's still a massive amount of room for profit within that individual property. We can see a property below that looks to be in South San Francisco as well, for Magnolia Avenue. We can go ahead and go back here. And since it's in South, I'm just going to go ahead and just copy the new avenue. And we can see that here's another single family home. If we're to scroll in, we can see that the property is located right here. And then down here below, we can also see when this this photo was taken. So we can see that it was taken in August 2014. So this photo is really less than a year old. We can see that it looks like the yard hasn't been cut, but overall, it looks not to be that terrible property. But we can see that that it looks like maybe somebody isn't living in this property. And so there's a good chance that maybe the property owner died. Maybe this was an investment property that the property owner hasn't had, the ability to pay. But from there, we're also going to take that address and we're going to see if there's any information on Zillow that can tell us a little bit more about the property. So we can see that even this little property in California, real estate is just crazy as far as the values. I mean, you know, usually if we're looking at a property in Florida, so one thing to consider as well, let's go ahead and click on this link because it might have a newer picture. So we can see here's the property right here, as far as the newer picture of the property. Well, we can see it has a $757,000 opening bid amount. We can see it sold in 2001 for $140,000. And of course, since then it's gone, you know, really up in value. Also, when it was probably purchased in 2001, it looks like it looks like to have some newer siding, so it may have had some type of work done on it since that time. But either way, we're looking at a property that's starting with an opening bid of $34,000 that's worth over $500, worth probably anywhere about $700,000. You can see here's another property in San Mateo with a $29,000 opening bid. And so essentially what we're going to be doing is we go through and look at the tax sale list. We're going to find properties that fit our investment objective, do the additional research, and then as the auction gets closer, we're going to do the additional due diligence so that we can determine if it's going to be a good property. So we can see that this property has been withdrawn. It looks to be like it was some type of auto body shop. So we're going to know that this particular property is one that we're not going to worry about because it's already been sold. So we can go ahead and look at this property right below there. We can see it's in Pacifica. And this property looks to be withdrawn as well. Okay, so this particular property looks like it's probably some type of land. You can see the land right there. So it does have an address so that we could research it if we want to. But for these examples, we're primarily looking for structure property. Here's one on Palm Avenue. So we can see here it looks to be a nice little single family home. We have the address again listed right here. And we're really just going to go through that same process. And essentially what you're going to do is go through this process with all of the tax liens on the list or tax deeds on the list that you're interested in. Now with tax lien investing, if you're participating in a large auction, you might not be able to go through and look at every single individual property like we could with this list. Probably within about an hour, 2 hours, we can go through and review every property that would fit within the price range that we're looking for, depending on what it is. With the tax lien list, it may be thousands of tax lien certificates, so you're going to even narrow down that amount that you're going to research to even a smaller amount. So if you have $10,000 to invest, you may say, well, I'm going to look at, 2 tax liens for $5,000. So you're going to look for tax liens that are about $4,500 or $5,500, so you can narrow down that list to even a smaller price point so that you don't have to research as many properties. But we can see it's this little property right here. We're going to take that address and go ahead and search it on Google Maps. Excuse me, on Zillow.com. And we can see that, man, that real estate is just so expensive there. Can't believe it. A property like this in Florida, may run anywhere from $50,000 to maybe $150,000 in a good market. But here within the Bay Area, we're looking at $1.3 million for a single-family home that's 1,600 square feet. It's just mind-boggling to me. But either way, we're looking at a $38,000 opening bid amount on a property that's worth $1.3 million. You really can't get a better examples as far as some of the profit margins than you can with some of these tax lien certificates. Now here's a tax lien that has a higher opening bid amount, $233,000. Let's go ahead and look at this last one, and then we're going to go look at some of the Florida auctions. So we can see it looks like it to be a pretty big single-family home. Let's go ahead and click on the parcel image. We can see a pretty large custom home. Let's go ahead and see what this property is valued at. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the Google Maps view, and we always want to check to see when that photo was taken down there below. So we can see that the yard looks to be in quite a bit better shape than this particular photo here. We can see that the grass is is kind of going brown, but we're still looking at a very nice expensive home versus this view right here, where this image was taken in 2011. So we know that this is going to be the more current view. We're also going to take that address and go through and see what this property is valued at. And I'm actually pretty curious to see what it could be valued. Wow. Valued at over $4 million. So we're looking at a property with an opening bid amount of $233,000, valued at over $4 million. And so this is kind of a unique example, just because within San Francisco Bay Area the property values are so high. But we can look at that bid to value ratio and see that all of these are pretty nice properties. We can see that this property, let's go ahead and see, we can see it sold in 1996 for over $1 million. It's about 5,000 square feet. It has a pool. We can see the property located right here. So, overall, we're looking at it really, a custom single-family home, really a mansion. You're looking at a $4 million property. In my book, that's close to a mansion, at least as far as value is concerned. Over 5,000 square feet. And we can see also from here that really you're in a very, very nice area of town. We can see this home right here is worth 11.3. This home's worth 11.1. 7.9, 7.3, 8.4. So really, this home right here is one of the cheapest homes on the street. I'll take the cheapest home on the street every day if the homes that are around me are valued at quite a bit higher. So let's go ahead and review some of these other upcoming auctions. Let's go ahead and look at some of the auctions happening in Pinellas. Now, the way to get to any of these online auctions, if you go here to Secrets of Tax Lien Investing, you can go ahead and click on any of these links here to take you to the online auctions. If you're interested in tax lien auctions, you can go ahead and click on that. You can see any of the tax lien auctions that are coming up, the dates, and click on any of the links to review the online auction sites. But here we're going to go to Pinellas County. We can see the auction calendar right here. So we're going to go ahead and click on the auction calendar. And we're going to go ahead and click on the sales date. Let's go see if I can answer some of these questions real quick. Okay, got a quick question. I'm pretty sure it probably had to do with the San Francisco properties we were looking at. Most likely these will be redeemed by the bank, if not the owner, don't you think? Well, there's a good chance that some of them will, and we see that some of them did, but there's also a good chance that many of those properties, or at least some of those properties, are going to go to auction. That's just kind of generally how it is. As we go through and look at some of these Florida auctions, we'll see properties, and some of them will redeem and some of them won't. In fact, let me show you right here. We can see that there's 48 properties coming up for auction. There was originally 54. So about 6 properties have already been off this list, but of course the auction is only a week away. And so, it's some of your very highest markets, maybe about 50% of them, as far as kind of the high amount that may go off the list. So if you have a list of 100 properties, by the time of the auction, it may be 50 properties. But it's usually about 70% of the properties are still available during the sale. And so, that's the reason I always recommend don't spend hours and hours and hours researching an individual property until you get within about a week of the auction. So as I'm reviewing an upcoming auction, I'm going to look through and just kind of do that quick research that we did. I'm going to check out the property on Google Maps, look to see when the photo was taken. I'm going to review the property values if I can on a Zillow.com, and then I'm going to mark the properties that I'm interested in if the auction's a month or month and a half out. You know, if it's a month out, I don't want to spend hours researching properties that may not be available to sell. Usually, if the property owner is going to pay off, most of the time, I would say probably 60–70% of the properties are going to pay off before a week, before, you know, really soon as that, within a week or two of the property going up for sale. Once they understand it's going up for sale, many of those properties owners are going to pay it off because they don't want to take a chance. Then there'll be a handful of properties that are paid off within that last week of the sale. And so that way you really narrow down the time that you spend researching individual properties. But just as we can see here, you know, we only have a week to the sale. There's 6 properties, and so maybe by the time the auction comes, you know, they started out with 54 properties, and maybe there's 40 properties that are available at the sale. Okay, so if we go ahead and click on this list, we're going to see the auction calendar, the auction list. We can see the auction type, the case number, the certificate number. Then, of course, what are we looking for? We're looking for that opening bid amount, which is listed right here. We also, if you're a new investor, are probably looking to see if there's an address. But really the most important things that we can see within this particular list is that opening bid amount and also that assessed value. So if we were to go ahead and click on this address, we can go ahead and copy that. We can see that here's a property, you know, $5,000 opening bid. It only has a value of about $30,000. Now, of course, that's going to be the assessed value. So let's go ahead and click on the link, and let's pull up the property records to see if there's something more interesting on it. So we can see that this property does have a structure. We can see it right there. And then we can see the property also right here as well. So, you know, I would imagine it's probably some type of trailer property, but let's go ahead and do a search real quick. So we see the property located right here, and if we were to look here at this map, we can see that, you know, this is the same property. So we can see it's right here on the corner, right here on the corner, right there, and then we're going to go ahead and click on the street view. So we can see that this looks to be a smaller type of property. Let's go ahead and see what the market says this property is. Now, most places in Florida right now are actually really underassessed because when Florida took such a massive market hit, you know, between 2005 to 2010, kind of within that area, you know, so many properties, you know, really their values split in half. So if they were worth $100,000, you know, in 2005, by 2010 that property is worth $50,000. And so the county went through and they underassessed a lot of the property taxes, especially properties that property owners were delinquent. And now those property values are starting to raise. If we were looking through a lot of areas, we're going to see that the property values are slowly going up in many of these markets. So, you know, with this property, we're looking at about a $58,000 estimated value. And so when we're looking at about a property that could be worth about $58,000, well, that $5,000 opening bid doesn't quite seem as bad, or that $4,900 opening bid, because that still only has about a 10% bid to value ratio. Now below that, we can see here's a property with a $9,000 opening bid with a $98,000 assessed value. So that assessed value bid to value ratio is actually lower than 10%. Let's go ahead and click on the link and pull up some additional property information. So we can see that the property sold for $137,000. We can also, as we continue to scroll down, we can also look up here, and this is something we can look at here as well. And this is something you do want to look at. So we can see here underneath the owner and mailing address, we can see that it's, Doris DeFalco, but where are they located? We can see that the property owner is living in Franklin Park, Illinois, and of course the site address is 3224 Beaver Drive, Clearwater, Florida. So this property isn't owner occupied. Most likely this was some type of investment. And that's probably the reason they're losing at the tax sale, is because they bought this property as an investment. As the market changed and as things changed, they didn't have the money to continue paying on it. And so now it's going to be going to a tax sale. In fact, one of the properties I purchased, that we reviewed earlier today, that property owner was actually living in Minnesota. And it was actually, from what I could tell, it was an older gentleman that looked to be probably in a rest home. And so, he wasn't paying his property taxes, wasn't really concerned about it, or wasn't thinking about it, or for whatever reason, didn't pay the property taxes and went to the tax deed auction. And so that's going to tell us something. If the property is owner occupied, that probably increases the chances that the property owner is going to pay it off before the auction. Now, that doesn't always mean they will, but that'll, of course, increase the chances. So as we continue to scroll down, we can see that, as we look at these assessed values, that's where we can see really that market bubble. When you hear about the real estate bubble, this is what it looks like. We can see, we go from 59, 63, 72, 80, to 83. Then about 2003, it really starts, it rockets up every year from 100 to 105, 122, 150, 154. So in 2007, this property was worth 154 as far as the county assessed value. And then what happens in 2000 and 2007? We see the property starts going down in value, 141. Then between 2008 to 2009, what does it drop to? 107. Then it drops another $10,000 to 97. Then it drops another $7,000 to 90. Then in 2013, it drops to 84,000. And then 2013, it's the lowest it was since 2002. And we see it has a value of 84,866. But then what happens in 2014? It's going back up in value. And this is what's happening in all kinds of markets across the country. That's the reason it's such a good time to be involved in tax lien and deed investing. With tax lien investing, you're earning the biggest interest rate returns. The stock market dropped today. Everyone that had invested in those stocks lost money today. If you were investing in tax lien certificates, you didn't lose money. Your interest rate was guaranteed. If you're looking to acquire property, we're looking at a property here that's gone up from $84,000 to $98,000 in the last year, between 2013 to 2014. This would be a property that's going up in value. You can see here as the building structure, and see all of these different links that you can go ahead and click on if you're doing additional due diligence. We can see this property was built in 1979. It's about 1,500 square feet. One story. And then of course we can see the property located down here on the map as well. So what we're going to do is take that address. We're going to go back to our trusty Google Maps, and we're going to pull up the property photo. We can see that it's located right here. Looks to be in a really pretty good area. Here's a golf course right here. Doesn't look to be that bad. Let's go ahead and click on the street view. So here's the property located right here. 3224. 3224. So here's our property right here. Let's go ahead and go to Zillow and see what this property is valued at. So we can see this property has a value of about $160,000 as far as the estimated value. We can see that it sold, last time it sold was back in 1979 for $46,000. Okay, now that actually tells me something about this property. We'd have to check the actual county record to verify that. But there's a good chance the property owner now lives in Illinois, right? So maybe they bought this property and lived in Florida and moved to Illinois, and this is their second home. This is their old home. Maybe they used it as a rental or some type of investment property. Also, if we go down here to this forecast, we can see that real estate bubble that we were talking about earlier. You know, see how back in 2005, you know, the home was worth 158, and then it peaked at about 191. You know, just about 200,000 right there, 198, and then it went back down, and now it's going back up. So this is you know, this is something you'll see in many areas that we're looking to invest in. In fact, on my Twitter account yesterday, I put up a some of the 10 most undervalued markets in the country, and believe it or not, number one was Detroit, Michigan. Now, Detroit is an area that you want to be careful investing in, but it's also undervalued. You know, the city is, they're doing many things to revitalize the city, and there's many areas in Michigan that are great for investing in tax properties. In addition to that, you can get the properties for such a low value that you know, they can make good rentals, they can make good investment properties, and so, you know, there's really good opportunities in every single market. Even a market like Detroit has great opportunities within Michigan, and there's great opportunities in Florida and California. You know, there's so many good opportunities to get started with tax lien and tax deed investing. You can see here's another property, $3,100 opening bid, $21,000 value. We can see that it has a number 211. So that probably tells us automatically that this is some type of condo property. And now, so we can see here this property. Now we don't have a street view. So what I'm going to do is I can see that the property is located right in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click here, and I'm going to review the street view from there. And so we can see it's one of these properties right in here. And this actually might be a commercial. This looks more like commercial condos versus residential condos. But we're also looking at a $3,000 opening bid amount. You know, so we're looking at some type of structured condo here. Here's one for $6,000, worth $47,000. So what we're doing, guys, is we're using this assessed value as just a gauge to make sure that there's value, and then we're basing it off of that opening bid amount. So, you know, here this property only has assessed value of $21,000, but it has an opening bid of about $3,000, and it probably has a market value of over $30,000. So you're still looking at only a 10% bid to value ratio. So if you can acquire this property at $3 to $5 grand, is there still money to make profit at $30,000? Absolutely. Absolutely, there's money to make profit. You know, this property down here below, 4,600. We can see it has a value of about $47,000. And we're really just going to go through that same process that we've been going through all night. We'll go ahead and click on the street view, and we can see that this property right here. Oh, that's kind of a cool road. Brick road. Now, I am not sure just by looking if this house is completely overrun or if it's on purpose to kind of, oh, there's a better view of it right there. But all we're looking for is that, you know, that bid to value ratio, and then also determine, you know, how much we would bid on the individual properties. Now, as we get closer to the auction, that's where you're going to go through and do a comparative market analysis. You're going to look for homes that have sold. You know, if we're looking at this home right here, we can see a property right up here that's sold. We can also go down here below and look underneath the comparable homes. So we can see the homes that are currently for sale. We can also see the homes that have recently sold. We can see that there's 5 there, you know, 6 within this price range. And so we can use these comparable homes and do a comparative market analysis on the property that we've talked about in some of the other webinars and that is in the home study program, and go through and determine, you know, what exactly this property is. If we look at some of these comparable homes, maybe we find that these homes are selling anywhere between $100 to $120 per square feet. Well, we know that if these homes are selling anywhere between $100 to $120 per square feet, that's going to be a good chance of what the property value is that we're looking at, because we're using comparable of homes that have sold or are currently for sale that are very similar to our home within that same market. So if the homes are selling at $100 a square foot, we know that the property we're looking at would sell for about that same price range. And really, guys, the great thing about this is, you know, we could go through and look at just one property after another of great properties. You know, here's one $7,000, $56,000. Here's one $5,000, $43,000. You know, all of these properties right here are going to be great, or at least have a good, you know, opening bid to value ratio. You know, we'll have to determine exactly what the condition of what the property is by doing a little additional due diligence. See, you know, this property right here. Oh my goodness, it's almost 9 o'clock. And these webinars are supposed to be an hour long, and of course I end up being pretty long-winded, and we go through. But you know, here's the property. It looks like it's valued about $67,000, but we can see some comparables here that we can use to help determine what this property is. So if we wanted to bid on this property, we could see a property here that we can use as an estimated property. We can use this property as an example. We can use this property as an example. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, valued at $52. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, valued at $54. So we can use these properties as examples to determine what the property that we're interested in is, you know, what about the value is. And that's going to help us determine what we decide to purchase the property for at auction, how high we decide to bid. You know, of course, as we're looking at this auction, it may start at $5,000, but just in the cases that I showed you with the properties I purchased, you know, we started at $5,000, ended up paying $10,000. We started at $10,000, ended up buying it for $20,000. So there's going to be, especially if it's a clean property, there's going to be some type of competition. But what we've done, or what you're going to do, and what I do, is I set my parameter beforehand so I don't get emotionally involved. The last thing you want to do with tax sale investing is overpay for a property. There's no need to. There's always another auction. There's always another opportunity. So, you know, once you've determined beforehand exactly what you're willing to spend, you know, on this particular property, I'm willing to go to, you know, let's say we do a comparable on this property, we figure it's worth 60 grand. I'm going to go to 15,000. I'm not going to go any more than that. And then we'll bid it up to that price. And if it sells for above that, then we let it go, because there's always going to be another opportunity. With tax deed investing, you don't want to overpay, because, you know, and especially you don't want to get emotionally involved. You don't want to start out at $5,000 and say, well, I'm going to stop at 15 and end up bidding 25. Because, you know, and believe it or not, most people get emotionally involved. I mean, I can't help getting emotionally involved. The only thing that saves me is doing the due diligence beforehand and setting the parameters. Because as you get, you know, as you get that feeling of, hey, I'm going to acquire this property, I'm going to get this tax deed, or, you know, you want to have a clear-cut decision of exactly how much you're willing to go to. That way there's no surprises, and that you're not going to overpay for a property just because the bidding gets competitive. You know, you're willing to let properties go. That's, you know, that's really that's really the way that you're going to avoid making mistakes. You know, as you go through and you've determined beforehand what you're willing to pay, then you're not going to overpay for a property. You're going to, you know, and even if you had to turn around and fire sell the property, you're still not going to lose your money, because you purchased it for 10, even if you purchased it for 50%. You can turn around and sell a property for 50% of its value in almost every market. So even in that scenario, you're not going to lose money. You may be able to make a small profit off it, and that's a very worst case scenario. And so as long as you do your research beforehand, you've set guidelines, then you're going to be successful with tax sale investing. The only time I've ever seen anyone unsuccessful with tax sale investing has really only been a couple of times in my entire experience investing, and then also my entire experience helping individuals from all over the country. Really, I've worked with investors from every single state, and that's people that didn't know what they were doing. I attended an auction a few years ago within my own state here within Utah, and there was a young couple at the sale that started bidding on property sight unseen without doing any research, just because other people were bidding on it. And there's an older gentleman that just bids on property to bid on property. He doesn't do any research as well. And so you had two people uninformed bidding on a property because they got emotionally involved and were bidding against each other, and they wanted to beat out the other person. That is not smart investing. And so as long as you do your diligence, you're going to be safe with tax sale investing because you're acquiring property for such a low cost of what the property is valued at. With tax lien investing, that tax lien is just a lien against the property where you're guaranteed to earn an interest rate return, but it's backed by the law and backed by the property itself. And so, that's the reason I'm so excited about tax sale investing and have been involved within it for as long as I have, is because, I just think that it's one of the best ways to acquire real estate, and it's the best way to earn an interest return on your money. If I had a choice between investing in tax lien certificates or the stock market, I'm going to invest in tax lien certificates. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want to diversify a little bit, but, I'm going to go for that guaranteed return versus a hope of a return. I know exactly what my return is going to be, and if the property owner doesn't pay off, then I get the opportunity to foreclose on the property and become the property's owner for really pennies on the dollar versus what the property is. With tax deed investing, you're usually going to pay more to acquire property than through tax liens. Because with tax deed investing, you're going to be bidding up the price of the property. With tax lien investing, you're usually just paying off the delinquent taxes and then foreclosing on the property. So you're either going to get back your money plus your interest rate return, or you're going to become the property's owner. So I've already went an hour over. Let me see if we can answer a couple more questions. Some of these questions are really long. Go ahead and send me emails if you have any additional questions. And as far as tax sale investing, guys, there's just such great opportunity. You're taking that first step by being on the phone this evening. You're getting started, and now really it's just a matter of going out there, doing some due diligence, start reviewing auctions. Don't be afraid to go through. Take some time and start reviewing individual county tax sales, even if you don't plan on bidding. I mean, just do exactly what we did this evening. Go review a tax sale list, an online auction, and start reviewing individual properties, even if you don't plan on investing there. Because that experience, you don't have to spend all day doing it, but go spend an hour. Go spend an hour reviewing upcoming auctions. Get an idea of how to go through this process. It's only going to make you that much better when you're actually ready to start investing, and it's also going to help you understand the process of going through reviewing properties, looking up the property values, looking for properties within the area that have sold. All this information is just going to help you when you're ready to start investing. Guys, there's so many opportunities available. Go ahead and email me if you have any questions. Go ahead and check out the members section. We're adding new information, new auction list, new tools all the time. So come back and check us daily. If you're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, go ahead and follow us. We're always going to be updating that information with good tips, with good strategies, with good information. And so, all of this is going to be additional tools for you. Again, thank you for being on the line. The replay of this webinar is going to be in the members section in the training center underneath the video tab. It'll be the video training for the week, and then after the week is over and we have a new training, we'll go ahead and put it down here in the list that you can click on to review any of these individual trainings. Again, thanks for being online, guys, and have a great evening and an awesome week. And hopefully we'll see you at the auction.